Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show. Hey, how's it going?
It's going. I took all of this week off, so don't tell anyone. But I'm I've been just grinding out some Excalibur bugs and doing some like dev tool debug, like quality of life stuff. I'm feeling pretty good about it. There's a lot of good suggestions. You can't see it, but I have a massive to-do list here on this clipboard. I'm going to try to get like a dent in before Turkey Day here in the US.
Yep. It feels there's something about having just like a physical to-do list with just like everything on it.
Yeah. It seems to work better for me lately. I don't know. I feel like I have to switch to-do list things like every few months to trick the novelty part of my brain into activating.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Very nice. Well, I was at like my brother's wedding stuff for most of the week last week because I mentioned we did the bachelor party last weekend. So I already talked about that. That was a lot of fun. And then we had the rehearsal dinner, and then we had the wedding ceremony and, all the stuff leading up to that. And then also family invited for brunch the next day on Saturday. So just a busy week, but it was a lot of fun. The kids were in the wedding. So my son was the ring bearer, and then my daughters were flower girls. So yeah, they had a lot of fun. And I stayed up until like 2 a.m. at the bar with my brother. We were like I was like the last man standing.
You closed it down.
Everyone else went home. Yep. And so it was just him and his wife and me.
My body can't cash that check anymore.
I mean, so I stopped drinking around 11 when the bar closed at the wedding venue, but I did buy him a drink, just one.
Good.
So yeah, because I had to drive home.
Yeah. This reminds me of one of our friends. Their kid misheard like what ring bearer. So they were the ring bear. Rawr. So they were just in the wedding going, rawr.
Nice.
Like a bear.
That's funny.
Rami was the ring bearer at my wedding, and we just gave him an empty box.
Yep.
So word to the wise, don't give valuable things to toddlers.
No. And now he's 8, so the rings were in the box, and he gave them over. So it worked well, and then he wanted to keep the box afterwards.
Yeah, I bet. It's a nice box.
Well, it's really good for chomping on hands, as the spring loaded.
Yeah, it's kind of got like the.
Yep. So it became the chomper. Anyway, should we move on to the news for the week of November 17th?
We should. We're opening it up with a new Angular release, version 21. They dropped this last week. They should have led with Zoneless is ready for prime time, and Vitest is now a thing, which both of those things will improve the speed of your app, because Zoneless, you don't have to have like this crazy thing listening to everything to figure out if it should do change detection. So that'll be good. And then Vitest will improve your life because, one, Karma is not supported anymore. And it hasn't been since 2023, and it runs way faster. So Vitest runs way faster. There's the couple other notable things in that blog post. They have signal forms are now experimental. If you were wanting things that look kind of like signals in Angular kind of feel like knockout observables. So that's a thing you can try. Those are experimental right now in this release. Definitely check that out. And then they've added some stuff to accessibility. So they've added Angular ARIA. So there's a whole bunch of accessible components and UI patterns that they're releasing here. So that's another thing to take a look at. Huge for us because we use Angular for our student-facing apps. So this is great that we're getting kind of first-party support here and not having to kind of hammer and tongs it all the way. And then maybe the last thing that's kind of interesting here is they've added an MCP server to help you like just what are the best practices in Angular, which I think is pretty cool, to find up-to-date documentation, to update your application. So they have a Zoneless migration tool, which I'm going to be curious how I imagine that's just running the code mod because it's an MCP server. It's just going to run the code mod. It's not going to run like like a Claude agent or you know, a ChatGPT or what is the Google one, Gemini thing on your code, it's probably going to run like a specific tool, I imagine. And then there's also like, it'll teach you Angular. So I think this is actually a really cool way to like get that rubber duck into your dev cycle. So you're like, oh, I forget how to do this thing. You can just be in editor, in situ, and you can ask the question of the MCP server for the thing that you're working in. And I think that's a really interesting way to do this.
Actually, a mental note to file it away. I want to remember that exposing code mods through an MCP server is actually a really great use case.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that's what they're doing, but I think that would be like, that's super wise, I think.
Yeah, if they're not doing it, that's probably what it should do.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
That's
yeah,
cool.
But it looks really cool. I'm definitely going to be adding a story in our backlog for Christmas to the Christmas holiday season when nothing gets done to upgrade to Angular 21.
Nice. So that gives you access to Vitest browser mode now too.
Yes.
That'll be nice.
Yeah. That'll be super cool.
Cool. We got another smaller meta framework. Astro just had a little minor release. I think the big headliner there is SVG optimization. They're using SVG Go, it looks like, which helps reduce the size of your SVGs when you import them. But another little TypeScript goodie that they added was the ability to get schemas for your actions. So if you create an action using their API, you usually pass like your schema object to it. And you know, like in how a lot of schema libraries, you can say like z.infer or like, hey, go get me the type that represents the schema that I just created.
Mm-hmm.
So they introduced a utility type to do that. So their example, you can build like a contact form with a server-side action, and then you can use this utility type to get like, what is my contact schema? And then it'll just extract it. So that's just a little nice thing if you're creating reusable actions and stuff that they added.
Cool. There was a whole bunch of TC39 advancements this last week. Thank you, Rob Palmer, the mouthpiece of the ECMAScript TC39 community. There's a whole bunch. I'll just pick out a few of my favorite, but there is literally a whole bunch, so I'm not going to read out a huge list. But a couple that caught my eye is the JSON.parse source text, which allows you to have access to the source text of when you're doing a JSON.parse. So like for the like inflator functions, you might want that access to do something special. Like if you have like some sort of DSL for a thing, or you're dealing with dates. I don't know. Maybe you're dealing with dates and you want to like parse it into your date format that you're using or your date library that you're using. You know, something interesting there. There's also promise.aldKeyed, which is nice because promise.all, you give it like a tuple of promises. And then you have to remember what position, you know, each thing is because it'll shoot out an array out the left-hand side. Well, this allows you to get an object out the left-hand side so you can just do destructuring like that with like, you know, human words, which is nice.
Nice.
You know, versus like, okay, I got to do underbar, underbar, underbar. Okay, that's the one I want. And then if you ever change the order, then you've got a bug. Import text specifiers has advanced to stage 2. So this is that I want to import, you know, something, something, something with attribute text, which is huge. That's a big one. And a whole bunch of internationalization came through too. So energy units and the unit protocol also went through. So those are, but yeah, please go take a look at that. There's a lot more on there. And if you're like, this other one is way cooler, you should have mentioned, but those are the ones that caught my eye.
Nice. I see that there's some like typed array stuff too. Looks like you can concatenate typed arrays and be able to use the find function with typed arrays. So that's cool.
Yeah, typed arrays are more like arrays and more useful.
Yeah, you would think so. You would think that that's what they would do. Okay, that makes sense. Guess what? We have another PSA security issue. Shai Hulud strikes again.
Yep. This is extra bad. It's 500 plus confirmed repos that were got. And if you're using anything from at Zapier, at Async API, at Postman, at Posthog, at ENS domains and more, there's tons in there. Go take a look at the socket.dev blog post for like the big list. And also go check your GitHub orgs to make sure you don't have any Shai Hulud action. but it's
Yeah,
bad.
I think just to remind people, so the way to know that you got is you go check your GitHub account and see if there's like a repo that got created with like a random name, because that's what the worm does, is it creates a public repo with like a marker file that it then uses to access credentials. So if you don't have that, you might be okay, but then you'll also want to go and double check the versions of the dependencies that are listed there. But we do have some practical tips, right? Because this is a PSA, but then it's also like, okay, what do I do? You know, like how do I prevent this, or how do I sort of avoid this type of thing, mitigate this? So one really good resource is to check out Node.js Security, which is by our friend of the show, Liran Tal. His blog has a whole bunch of stuff, but the one I'll link to is how to use npm ignore scripts and best practices for that. So, for example, like what me and Eric did with our repos, we created an npm-rc file, and then you can add the ignore scripts flag, set that to true, and then anytime npm install runs or npm ci or some of these other commands, it will always ignore any pre-install and post-install scripts, because that's usually the attack vector for a lot of these malicious packages. And then you can also set the npm config globally across your whole system. So any new projects that you create, you don't have to remember to like always disable pre-install and post-install scripts. And he goes through in a lot more detail of like, you know, there are some times when you do want to enable it. How do you do that? And if you're using Yarn or PNPM, you know, how does that work? So I'd definitely recommend just reading through it and implementing some of those tips.
Yeah. And, you know, call back to our last episode that I think all of those strategies for mitigation also are applicable, like having a minimum bake time on packages, you know, doing things like socket.dev, where they can do like real-time analysis of sus packages, these kind of things, making sure that your GitHub actions are tidy and you're not dropping tokens inappropriately into your GitHub actions. It might be good to do a GitHub actions audit and make sure that they're all the way that they should be. Did you know you can make shareable actions for your org by putting them in your .github org folder, so you can have like a consistent action that you can reference? Did you know you could do that? So you don't have to copy paste, you know, actions for every one of your 300 repos that you have.
Yep.
You can make one.
Yes. Actually, my course on authoring GitHub actions and maintaining them covers that a little bit, but there's some other good Pluralsight courses that go into some of those more advanced GitHub action stuff you should take a look at. And the other thing you can obviously do is reduce your dependency tree. And one real world example of that, I just saw on Blue Sky for TypeScript ESLint. They have a PR that is replacing FastGlob, that package, with one called TinyGlobby, which uses way less dependencies. So I think they said it removes over a dozen dependencies in the tree, and it's also faster, which is also great. So just, you know, making your dependency tree a bit more shallow so that the attack surface is reduced is always a good idea.
Yeah, and another thing that we talked about that is kind of old school but maybe new school is just vendoring your libraries. So copying, like, you know, either doing like a cursed git submodule or, you know, copying down the library itself source in another way into your project and bundling it in, you know, where license permits is a good way to, you know, just control the library. And if you're willing to take on maintenance of your own, like, quote unquote fork of it.
Yep. It's always a good idea. We've got a few library watches that are new on the block that we're kind of excited about, or at least the first one I'm excited about. This is NovaDI, which is a decorator-free dependency injection library for TypeScript. So a couple cool things about this. Like it says, there's no decorators. In fact, there's no annotations whatsoever. And it's inspired by Autofac, which if you're a .NET developer, you kind of know how Autofac works. It uses what they call a container root. So basically all it means is you configure your whole dependency injection setup in one place. And so you can say like, register this type, you know, as my interface, and then it just uses pure constructor injection for the rest of it. And it's done using compile time type analysis. So it plugs into your bundler. And that's why it's pretty cool, because there's like very, very little runtime overhead for doing this, because it can analyze it during compile time. And it's only 3 kilobytes or something gzipped at runtime, and it has no dependencies.
Mm-hmm.
So for that reason, it's super fast, and they have a pretty nice benchmark setup. And you can take a look at their benchmark, but it's not like a toy setup. It's actually sort of like a complex app type of setup to really try to get a good measurement of like, here it is compared to other libraries. And the only other library that is decorator free would be Brandy, Brandi. So yeah, with the DI not being a DY, but a DI.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the only other one, and it has pretty comparable performance too. So you could also check out Brandy.
Mm-hmm.
But when I saw NovaDI, I saw it on Reddit, and it seemed super nice and was one of the top voted posts for last week. Probably for good reason, because we're sort of looking for something like this.
Nova, you're a fine dependency injection. What a good no annotations you would be. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, so if I needed a dependency injection library, then I would be taking a look at this.
Next up on the library watch, we have from Andreas Kuntz, UI5 types. So if you are an SAP web developer, which you might be if you're listening to this show, now you get TypeScript types. Finally, it seems like it should have been here a while ago, but yeah, UI5 with TypeScript is now a thing. So you heard it here from Andreas Kuntz.
Nice. I feel like I've never had to work with UI in SAP before. I've only seen like a little bit of like ABAP programming and stuff, which is the back end.
Yeah, I've managed to avoid all interaction with SAP. And for those not in the know, ABAP is kind of like a dialect of COBOL, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the kind of programming if you can visualize in your head. It probably pays well though.
Yeah, that's right. Cool. All right. Ready for some community highlights?
Yeah.
Well, if you are a TypeScript developer, which we hope you are, because you're listening to this podcast, but if you're still like trying to learn TypeScript and you're also kind of interested in C#, which we mentioned here a few times, and me and Eric are both C# developers, Charles Chen has put together a really cool guide, and it's very detailed for backend developers who already know TypeScript and want to learn C#. And this is like modern .NET, like up to .NET 10 type of C#. So you can see some like how if you ever use C# in the past with like .NET Framework, it's really nothing like that anymore. It's very like you can use it across platforms on Linux, Mac, Windows, and the C# language has also evolved quite a bit. And just as a reminder, Anders Heilsberg, who created TypeScript, also created C# before that. So the two languages are very similar in a lot of ways, and then they're also very different. So you can learn kind of what those differences are if you're interested in doing like backend development with C#.
I might just have this like up on my screen all the time because I do a lot more stuff in TypeScript lately than I do in C#, and I find myself being rusty in C#. I'm like, how do I do that thing again?
Yeah.
I know how to do it in TypeScript, but and so this is one nice thing is if you're like very familiar with TypeScript and you know how to do a thing in TypeScript, you can just like noodle straight to the thing in the documentation here and then be like, oh yeah, that's how I do it in C#.
There's a lot of really cool like features in C#. Well, one I'm thinking is pattern matching, so you can do that now.
It just kind of cleans it up. And, C# has async await. It looks almost exactly like TypeScript, JavaScript async await, like almost verbatim.
Yep. Yeah, that's why it made it a really nice fit for my MCP and practice course, because even there might be a lot of TypeScript developers that take it, but reading the C# is very similar to like reading TypeScript. But yeah, what else you got?
All right, next up, I have a article from Dominic on Blue Sky. Have you ever seen a TypeScript type say T extends any ? ? Never? And why would you do that? Does that actually do anything? Is that a thing? What is that doing? Well, he wrote a blog post all about it. In fact, it does do things. And he wrote up an article about distributive Omit type in his newest article, so go check that out. And it talks about why TypeScript's built-in Omit breaks discriminated unions and how this version preserves them. So definitely go check that out.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Nice. I should learn a little bit more about that because discriminated unions are very nice, but I wasn't aware that using Omit on them breaks them.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't either. So today I learned. Next on the list is a VS Code extension for our Gophers out there that converts Go structs into TypeScript interfaces and vice versa. So if you are a Go developer who also is using TypeScript, you might find this useful.
If you want to contribute to the TypeScript Go code base, maybe.
Yeah. Another one that showed up on the Blue Sky was from Blue Sky user NotNite, and they added function hooking in x86-64 in Deno because they were bored. And so function hooking is basically like I'm intercepting a function and providing my own implementation. So for example, they want to hook random and do their own random version, and like return 42 all the time in their random version. So it can be used for a good or evil, but it's definitely useful when debugging.
Nice. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so you can create like debug hooks to add more logging or things like that. Nice.
Cool. And the last thing I've got is a funny one from Jake Bailey showing the TypeScript Go package spiking to over 1.5 million downloads. And he's like, who are you people?
Somebody has added the TypeScript Go package to their CI build.
I bet you that's part of it. It's like it's getting incorporated in CI.
Yeah. I wish there was a way to like distinguish between users and like automation tools with like npm package stats, but
yeah,
I don't know. I don't think there's really a good way.
Was it installed with npm CI or was it installed with npm install?
Yeah.
I feel like that might be like, that might still lie to you.
For sure. Yeah.
There's plenty of people doing npm install inside of CI.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's all we had for community highlights this week. We can move on to our cool links.
Yeah. I was really busy this past week, so I don't really have any cool links besides the fact that I've been playing a new game, Outer Worlds 2. And so that's my cool game for the week. Is you should play it. It's pretty fun. If you liked Outer Worlds 1, I think you'll like Outer Worlds 2. And I'm only about an hour and a half into it, but yeah, if you like sort of sarcastic corporate dystopia type games, that's kind of what it is. It doesn't take itself very seriously.
I love that. I got two. Xbox announced that they're unlocking access to all of their game publishing documentation for all devs.
Oh,
which is awesome because if you're in the know, you know that to go on a console is all NDA'd. So like you need to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And I really hope that PlayStation and Nintendo follow suit here because that would be awesome.
Yep.
Because all of that documentation is behind NDA. So I'll link to the article here and you can now read all of this documentation, now NDA free, which is pretty cool. So hopefully that causes others to do the same. And the other cool link I've got is JSLegend has a really great YouTube video about making a small RPG, kind of like old school Final Fantasy like 1 style, like where you have the big or Dragon Warrior style, where you have the big overworld and you're walking around, and having random encounters and stuff. So definitely check that out. He builds stuff in JavaScript, TypeScript. I think he built it in Kaplay, which is another video game engine on the web. But definitely check it out. It's a great video of him analyzing and building a small RPG.
That's pretty sweet. Ooh, fun stuff. Well, what thoughts are coming to your mind?
Well, let's see. I think we got to take, we talked about this before, but I think security is kind of like, it's kind of bad right now. Like the fact that Shai Hulud strikes again is not a good sign. And I was kind of thinking, I was talking to you before the show that I wonder if they had some creds that weren't burned after the first attack to do the second attack. Or if they had to do a brand new campaign to get access to these repos. But
yeah.
I think anything you can do to improve your security posture around NPM or any package manager, I think plenty of other package managers have the same vulnerabilities as NPM. It's just NPM has a lot of market share, so it's a tasty target. So I think there's a lot of lessons we can learn, I think, from Shai Hulud in particular, but from NPM on like a broader scope of how to secure package systems.
Yeah, definitely recommend using something like socket dev that can like intercept your npm install or yarn install commands and like does the scan for you, because that way you can be sure that at least when you're at the installation stage, you're not taking in something that's known to be vulnerable. It's not perfect, right? Because at least with Shai Hulud, it's like reactive. Like the way to figure out if a package got compromised is only after it's been compromised, right? So they're still updating the list. So as of this recording, it's like 530 some packages, but that could expand, which is kind of scary. I think for local development, like for sure, just disabling pre-install, post-install is like a really nice, good step to take. And then also just making sure that in your GitHub Actions, you're using npm CI and not npm install, because npm CI will make sure that it uses your package lock JSON as a source of truth, whereas npm install could modify it. So yeah, definitely want to do that.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, but I think just a little bit of housekeeping as a reminder. This week is Thanksgiving week here in the US. So if you celebrate that, have a good Turkey Day. If you don't, have a good vacation. But we'll be back. We'll be back next week after being quite full with turkey and other foods. So it'll probably be a slow week this week.
Yep. Yeah, I imagine the news will be hopefully slow.
Hopefully.
I don't want any news.
Yeah, that's right. Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you next week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to TypeScript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at Kamronicus.com and Eric is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.